Welcome to the World Health Summit 2022, for the first time together with the World Health Organization. We must choose for our planet, for our health. The climate crisis poses a dire threat to the global health of humanity. Diseases like malaria and dengue fever are spreading. Heat waves and storm surges are claiming thousands of lives. And food security hangs in the balance for millions all over the world. Those who live in the global south are most in danger, although they contributed least to the climate crisis. We must take resolute steps in setting a course to achieve a climate-neutral world. We can create societies that value health and well-being for humanity, but also for ecosystems and the environment. A healthy planet is possible. Making the political choice for health, we can implement game-changing strategies that will decisively improve healthcare globally. Among them, a new international instrument for better pandemic prevention, protection, and response, so that new pathogens can be identified more quickly and jointly combated in good time worldwide. We also need health financing at a global scale that will strengthen healthcare systems everywhere and ideally give everyone an equal chance at a healthy life. One aspect of this is fully financing the global initiative to eradicate polio, ushering in a world free of the potentially wasting disease. Then there's digital health. It has huge potential to improve efficiency in healthcare systems and reduce costs dramatically. It can make vital information available to anyone, anywhere. And artificial intelligence is helping make diagnosis faster and more precise. We have decisions to make about new solutions in global healthcare. The World Health Summit 2022, together with the WHO, in Berlin and online.
Please welcome to the stage Katharina Böhme and Axel Pries.
Dear Chancellor Scholz, dear Director General Dr. Tedros, dear Minister for Solidarity and Health Brown, dear Director General for Health of the European Commission, Sandra Gallina, dear Minister Lauterbach, dear Virchow Prize Laureate, Dr. Nkenga Song, dear Ministers, dear delegates of the WHO and the M8 Alliance, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. I cordially welcome you to this World Health Summit, which is the very first one held together with the WHO. And it was a brilliant initiative of my friend Dr. Tedros, and with the help of Katharina Böhme here beside me, to bring together the eminent visibility, power and relevance of the WHO with the dynamic team of the World Health Summit and the format which was established by Detlef Ganten over 10 years ago here in Berlin. This event convenes a very active and diverse group of people interested in global health worldwide and many of young professional leaders. Together, this gives us a chance to take global health to a new level, what is the motto of this opening. I'm very grateful that you here in the audience, but also then in the sessions, contribute your expertise and especially your engagement for global health. And I very much hope that you will enjoy these days here in Berlin. We do our very best. And with this, I hand over to my friend Katharina, please.
Thank you so much, Axel. Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, I'm abbreviating. On behalf of the World Health Organization, I would like to offer my warm and sincere welcome to all of our guests here today and everybody joining from afar. WHO is honored to be a co-organizer of this year's World Health Summit. It brings together diverse sectors and all regions of the world. Thank you, Axel, and the entire World Health Summit team for taking us along on this journey. This will be an exciting 3 days ahead of us, and it will kick off today with this opening session moderated by public health advocate Spring Gombe. These last pandemic years have been a challenge for all of us, but the lesson is clear. We can take on global threats only together. Now, in the face of so many overlapping crises, from war to climate change to disease, partnership is essential. I would like to thank all of you here today and offer a round of applause to so many global health partners and friends. And on behalf of WHO, let me express my gratitude for the steadfast support and strong global health leadership of Germany, France, and the African Union, whose leaders, Chancellor Scholz, President Macron, and President Sall, are, along with Dr. Tedros, the patrons of this year's World Health Summit. Today, we have the great privilege and honor of being joined in person by Chancellor Scholz. Germany has shown outstanding leadership in its commitment to multilateralism, strengthening the global health architecture, and fostering a world that works together to solve pressing problems. It's now my honor, on behalf of WHO and the World Health Summit, to welcome Chancellor Scholz.
Director General Tedros, Professor Priest, dear Dr. Böhme, participants of the World Health Summit, ladies and gentlemen. Just a few days ago, the Nobel Committee in Stockholm announced this year's winner of the Nobel Prize in Medicine. Many of you know him, of course. It is Professor Svante Pääbo. I was particularly pleased with this choice. On the one hand, obviously, because Professor Pääbo has been teaching and engaged in research here in Germany since the 1990s, first at the University of Munich, later on at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig. This fills us with pride, and it speaks to the quality that Germany offers as a research hub. On the other hand, I was pleased because at the international level, we're sometimes gently mocked for being allegedly too focused on basic research. Time and again, I hear stories about the conundrum that scientists face, especially in basic research, where they find themselves wedged between the pressure to produce short-term results and the path towards innovation. Well, nowadays, they can have this referenced, the reference to Professor Pääbo. While still a student of Egyptology and medicine, he began researching the bones of Egyptian mummies, secretly and always worried that his PhD supervisor and the scientific community would think he was crazy. And by the way, he got his first research material from the Egyptian Museum in what was then East Berlin, and that was in 1984. And Dr. Pääbo then actually succeeded in finding DNA in the cells of a mummified child, but as it sometimes happens, this scientific breakthrough was initially published in a rather obscure journal in the former GDR. That is, until some researchers from Berkeley took notice. And the rest, as they say, is science history. A year later, Pääbo's publication, Molecular Cloning of Ancient Egyptian Mummy DNA, was a cover story in the Nature magazine. International newspapers reported enthusiastically on the findings, and a new medical discipline was born, paleogenetics. Well, in the meantime, the Nobel Prize winner and his colleagues have gone beyond the question of how much of our genetic material we, as Homo sapiens, share with our predecessor, at least some of us, the Neanderthal. And as an unscientific aside, fortunately it's only between 1% and 2%. But these gene variants still influence how our body reacts to certain diseases. And thus, thanks to Professor Weber and his studies, we know that some of us carry a Neanderthal variant on chromosome 3 that greatly increases the risk of developing severe COVID-19. And this stems back to the time where we cohabited, if you will, or coexisted with the Neanderthal. Ladies and gentlemen, I think Professor Weber's story sets an inspiring example. First, basic research matters. The fact that Professor Christian Drosten, who is director of the Institute of Virology here at the Charité Clinic in Berlin, developed the first successful virus test only a few weeks after the appearance of the coronavirus in Wuhan, well, that was also due to years of basic research into coronaviruses. And at a time when this cluster of viruses was still largely unknown to most citizens. Ugur Sahin and Özlem Türeci and their company BioNTech were able to produce a successful vaccine against COVID-19 within a very short time. And this is also due in no small way to years of groundbreaking research in developing mRNA technologies. And consequently, countless lives were saved during the corona pandemic. And I hope that this is just the beginning. Consider, for example, the potential of mRNA technology in cancer therapy. As a federal government, we will therefore continue to vigorously promote free research driven by scientific curiosity. This is what the Pact for Research and Innovation stands for. And it is further backed by our commitment to additionally increase funding for research and development to 3.5% of GDP by 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Weber's example underscores another aspect. Networking matters, cooperation matters, across national boundaries between different scientific disciplines and between the realms of science, politics, and society. If the attentive colleagues from Berkeley hadn't picked it up, the trailblazing research on the DNA of our ancestors might quite possibly have disappeared into some obscure drawer. The World Health Summit is a forum for networking and cooperation, and over the next few days you will engage in intensive debates with an international perspective in an interdisciplinary way and at the highest scientific level. And if anything, the corona pandemic has demonstrated how important this type of exchange is. Similar to other epidemics in recent years, it was probably caused by pathogens transmitted from animals to humans. And if our aim is to detect such epidemics at an earlier stage in the future, or even better, to prevent them, then we need to strive for much closer cooperation between different disciplines, a much better understanding of the links between human health, animal health, and the environment. One Health is the key word. This is, of course, only one of many areas in which complexity is increasing, in a world that is becoming ever more closely interconnected, increasingly marked by scientific innovation and technological progress. And therefore, politicians nowadays depend even more on the advice of scientists. At the very beginning of my term of office as Federal Chancellor, I therefore appointed an independent council of corona experts. 19 scientists have since then been supporting and advising us in the fight against the pandemic, and some of them are joining us here today. They have published 12 opinions so far, providing valuable advice on health policies, but also, for example, on communication strategies. And just as science is constantly expanding its knowledge, creating and testing new hypotheses, so too must science-based policy constantly review and adjust the chosen course, and if need be, adjust it. An international comparison yields clear insights. Those countries who listen to the advice of experts have come through this pandemic better than those who stuck rigidly to a particular crisis-fighting strategy. This success should strengthen our resolve to clearly oppose those who deliberately cast doubt on scientific progress, who spread disinformation, and who, in some extreme cases, even vilify and threaten scientists. Let me be clear about this. We cannot and will not accept threats being issued against scientists. Scientific freedom is a precious, precious asset, and together we will defend it. But this requires transparency, the kind of transparency obtained, for example, by publishing the advice of our corona experts. But beyond strengthening trust in scientific and political decisions, it also helps us to refute and stymie some of those disinformation campaigns. I am grateful for the contribution that the World Health Summit and all of you here are making by allowing scientific information to extend beyond the mere expert circles and become accessible to every citizen. Ladies and gentlemen, networking and cooperation matters. And this is true at the international as well, and in particular in the field of international health policy. During our G7 presidency, we have therefore made health a priority. On our agenda, almost 1.2 billion doses of vaccine have now been delivered by the G7 partners, more than initially pledged, by the way. The ACT accelerator, which makes vaccines, therapeutics, and diagnostics more readily available worldwide, is funded to the tune of 83% by the G7. Germany alone has contributed over 1.3 billion euros for this effort in 2022. We support countries in Africa and the Middle East to the tune of 850 million euros to ensure the administration of donated vaccines is organized. And together with the European Union, the African Union, African countries such as Senegal and Rwanda, we are supporting the development of a dedicated vaccine production in Africa. At this stage, obviously with a strong focus on COVID-19, but in the future with the ability to expand to other diseases such as malaria or Ebola. And by the way, in addition to the COVID-19 pandemic, it is important to keep a focus on the fight against these other diseases at the WHS. Millions of people in Asia, Africa, and Latin America are affected by tropical diseases that are still far too often overlooked. Our ambition is to change that. We're therefore supporting the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria with 1.3 billion euros. And that represents an increase of 30% since the last time the fund was set up. And polio also needs to be confined to the dustbin of medical history. That's why on the occasion of the Global Polio Eradication Initiative conference taking place next Tuesday, Germany will commit 35 million euros to create a polio-free world within this year. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to turn my gaze towards the future now. The shaping of our future benefits from drawing the right conclusions from the past, and this, by the way, is yet another possible lesson that we can draw from the advent of paleogenetics. Bearing this in mind, I would like to launch an appeal to us all. Let us join in drawing the right conclusions from the COVID-19 pandemic, and that is preparedness matters. The global community must be better prepared for future pandemics, identify threats more quickly, share information more closely, and develop countermeasures together and ensure access for all. During our G7 presidency, we have therefore agreed on a pact for pandemic readiness. And this involves, for example, closer cooperation on genome sequencing or the monitoring of sewage systems, wastewater systems in order to detect outbreaks earlier. And in New York, for instance, a polio outbreak was thus detected at an early stage, and the emergency was declared and targeted measures were adopted. In September, we established a financial intermediary fund to provide financial backing for pandemic preparedness and response. Germany has so far dedicated almost 70 million euros for this purpose, as one of 18 donors stemming from all over the world. And finally, we support the negotiation of an international pandemic treaty, as well as amendments to the international health regulations, in order to put us in a position to jointly be better prepared and to be able to act more effectively when a health crisis occurs. Ladies and gentlemen, drawing the right conclusions from the past in order to inform decisions regarding the future, this ability is a characteristic that sets the Homo sapiens apart from his predecessors. The reasons why, well, Professor Pebo could probably answer this question for us very quickly from a paleogenetic perspective. But looking around this room, my answer is because we have great scientists with a true calling as researchers, because we network and collaborate, and because we're willing to go further and project into the future, irrespective of the amount of Neanderthal genetic material we still carry with us. Welcome to Berlin. I wish you all a successful and insightful Health Summit 2022.
Haben Sie vielen Dank, Herr Bundeskanzler.
Thank you very much, Chancellor.
Consistency and coherence with which Germany has prioritized global health at the multilateral level, to be sure, as you have outlined, but also at the national level, across all ministries, across party political lines, and integrating the Parliament. We're also very pleased to welcome representatives from those branches of government to this meeting. As we consider how to extend partnerships, networks, and coherence for global health, a strong message is sent from Africa. President Macky Sall of Senegal, chair of the African Union, patron of the World Health Summit, in his recent address to the UN General Assembly, called for a new global health order, one which demonstrates a will to, and I quote, overcome the reluctance and deconstruct the narratives that persist in confining Africa to the margins of decision-making circles, end quote. The continent's capacities and needs must, going forward, inform the design of a new, resilient global health architecture. Let us hear more from President Sall as he addresses us.
Chers collègues, Mesdames, Messieurs les ministres.
Good evening, dear colleagues, ministers, Chair of the World Health Summit, dear Tedros, Director General of the World Health Organization, ladies and gentlemen. As a co-sponsor of the World Health Summit 2022, I would have been delighted to be there in person had my heavy agenda allowed it. And I would like to extend my greetings and thanks to my co-sponsors, Chancellor Olaf Scholz and President Emmanuel Macron, for their support. This summit comes at the perfect time. It is putting public health issues right at the heart of the international agenda. Yet, the COVID-19 pandemic is not yet over, and other health threats do prevail. As this year's topic invites us to do, we need to choose health more than ever before. Health is clearly a global public good, which we all have to take care of together, as transport health crises linked to other factors expose us to shared vulnerabilities. And this is true for the interdependence between climate change, our food systems, peace and health, which will be at the heart of your discussions. By learning lessons from the current crisis, we must be better prepared for future health challenges that we'll face. So, for Africa, our main priorities are strengthening and modernizing health structures, training qualified medical and paramedical staff, and medical and pharmaceutical production, including vaccines, to ensure our sovereignty. And I'm not forgetting the issue of access to vaccine commercialization and biotechnology platforms, so that Africa can fully participate in tackling health threats. Senegal remains committed to this momentum, to research, innovation, and collaboration. That's the spirit behind the Galleon Forum Africa, which bestows a prize of the same name. And since 2018, my country has been hosting this forum to encourage medical research and innovation across the continent. This spirit is also why next year in Dakar we're going to be holding the Grand Challenges annual meeting of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I'd like to congratulate Dr. Tedros and the organisers of the World Health Summit 2022. I wish you the very best success with your work.
As both President Saal and Bundeskanzler Scholz have pointed out, much remains to be done, much needs to be invested for global health. Is it me? I don't know. Okay.
So we are discussing pressing issues. Someone pressed the fire alarm. And he is not really supporting our debates over here. They are doing some protests about climate and things like that, and think this would improve our discussions. And I think the best way to improve the discussions is just continuing without hearing to it. Please.
Very good. This will be a World Health Summit to remember. So, I'll have to be quicker now, curtail some of my introductory remarks, but only to say that where health must be pursued, where work must be done, investments must be made. And on the part of the European Union, those investments will be made through the Global Gateway, which will take health through the next level and narrow persistent gaps in a number of sectors. For health, the priority will be on security and diversification of supply chains and strengthening development and manufacturing capacities. To learn more about the ambitious and very welcome plans of the EU, may I welcome Ms. Sandra Gallina, Director General of DG Santé, the Director General for Health and Food Safety of the European Union, speaking on behalf of President von der Leyen.
Thank you. Thank you, and we'll beat the sound tonight, I suspect. This is an African meeting. Chancellor Scholz, President Priest, Director General Tedros, I am humbled to be here. And Your Excellence, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. I have never seen such a crowded room for health. I have the privilege to speak to you on behalf of President von der Leyen and to underscore the European Commission's continuing support to this, I would say, to the pandemic and to the fight to the pandemic. Promoting and protecting global health has gone from being important to being absolutely essential to ensure the well-being of our citizens and our social and economic stability. The COVID-19 pandemic, thank you, without health there is nothing else. There is no economy, there's no society. The COVID-19 pandemic, you know, the COVID-19 pandemic, the war in Ukraine, or the climate crisis, which has been quoted tonight several times, have undermined decades of progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. You remember that? Including those related to health. But at the same time, these crises remind us that our greatest challenges are common ones. We can only overcome them together. They have also given us an opportunity to reset our engagement in global health in a complex geopolitical environment. So I am honored and humbled, I repeat, to join this year's World Health Summit, which provides us with a platform to do exactly that. And I want to thank wholeheartedly the organizers, the World Health Organization and Germany for gathering us in Berlin today. The world needs urgent and collective action to deliver on global health goals, and the EU is ready to play a leading role in this effort. We are in the midst of preparing an EU global health strategy in that respect. It represents our determination to take a global health to a new level and realize the highest attainable standard of health based on solidarity, equity, and respect for human rights. We live in a time of deep and shared responsibility to strengthen health systems and achieve better health for all people, including by delivering universal health coverage, ensuring equitable access to health care, maximizing the potential of digitalization, addressing the workforce challenge. Responsibility to focus particularly on women and girls and vulnerable groups. Remember Iran. Responsibility to address the interlinkages between health and the environment, food security, climate and other important policies. We urgently need to shape a new enhanced health order with an effective and accountable WHO at its core. We need to build a permanent link between global health and finance efforts and fill the gaps in global governance. Germany's vibrant leadership and Indonesia's drive have shown the importance of G7 and G20 in this endeavour. Negotiations on the financial intermediary fund offered us an important choice: to anchor its work to the WHO experience and support the future pandemic agreement, or to unmoor the fund from our multilateral system. The EU will continue to fight against any fragmentation at every opportunity. This is a collective responsibility. We need to achieve a quantum leap in our preparation for response to health threats. Building on Act A, we must consider a permanent platform that embodies vaccine equity and affordable access to countermeasures. We must aim at a global surveillance network that fully embodies the One Health principles that were quoted just by the Chancellor. And, we must require robust international rules, including a legally binding pandemic agreement. Let me finish by stressing that Team Europe will maximize its enormous potential for positive impact. We know what we need to do, I think. Today, we are stretching our hand out to others to join us in this effort to deliver a more equitable global health order. To succeed, we must engage in frank and inclusive discussion on global health, on governance structures, on fragmentation, sustainable financing, and on human rights. I look forward to begin this discussion here because the World Health Summit is the ideal setting for all of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gaina, for that forceful underlining of what needs doing. And so if we are to build this new anatomy of resilience for global health, we know it must be on the robust, if sorely tested skeleton of the World Health Organization, our World Health Agency. Under the leadership of Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, the people of the WHO have performed Herculean labors to guide us through the very, very turbulent times we are in, and they are still not over. And so as I invite Dr. Tedros to the podium, I do think this is a really good moment for all of us to show our appreciation to the people of the World Health Organization in all regions of the world. Dr. Tedros, we are keen to hear your plans to guide us to greater health and resilience, and more than that, to well-being. Welcome.
After the L, I'm very quiet now. Your Excellency, Chancellor Olaf Scholz, and all protocols observed, the whole list of Professor Axel Price, I endorse that. Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, Guten Abend. It's an honor to be here. And vielen Dank to you, Chancellor Scholz, and the government and people of Germany for your hospitality. My thanks also to you for your patronage of the World Health Summit, together with me and our fellow patrons, President Emmanuel Macron and President Macky Sall. I would also like to thank Professor Axel Price and your colleagues for your partnership as co-hosts of the World Health Summit for the first time. About 14 years ago, I received a call asking me if I was interested in joining a committee to start a new health conference in Germany. Thank you, Dr. Detlev Ganten, the past president, for that surprise many years ago. The first, and also thank you for your leadership, the first World Health Summit was held in 2009, which, as you remember, was the same year that the world last experienced a pandemic of H1N1 influenza. We are at a similarly decisive moment now, as the world emerges from the most severe health crisis in a century. The theme of this year's World Health Summit is taking global health to a new level. It sounds great, but what does it mean? Let me suggest three things. First, taking global health to a new level means we need a new global agreement or global accord based on a shared vision. At exactly the moment when the world needed to come together to face this common threat as one, the COVID-19 pandemic has been characterized by a lack of cooperation and coordination. When we can only face shared threats with a shared response, based on a shared commitment to solidarity and equity. That's what the pandemic accord or pandemic agreement that countries are now negotiating is all about. An agreement between the nations of the world to work together, not in competition with each other, to prepare for and respond to epidemics and pandemics. In 1968, at the height of the Cold War, countries across ideological divide came together to sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Today, it remains as relevant as ever. In the same way, the global accord now being negotiated will underpin the global approach to epidemics and pandemics for decades and maybe even centuries to come. And that's why we call it generational agreement. I need to be very clear. This accord or agreement is being negotiated by countries, for countries, and will be adopted by and implemented by countries in accordance with their own national laws. The claim by some that this accord is an infringement of national sovereignty is quite simply wrong. It will not give WHO any powers to do anything without the express permission of sovereign nation states. If nations can negotiate treaties against threats of our own making, like nuclear, chemical and biological weapons, tobacco and climate change, then surely it makes sense for countries to agree on a common approach to a common threat that we did not fully create and cannot fully control, a threat that comes from our relationship with nature itself. Such an agreement will provide an essential framework and foundation for other initiatives to keep the world safe. Which leads me to my second suggestion. Taking global health to a new level requires a new global architecture that's coherent and inclusive. Just as the pandemic exposed political vulnerabilities, it also exposed technical and operational vulnerabilities in the world's collective ability to prevent, detect, and respond to outbreaks and epidemics. It's clear we need new and better tools to build a new and better architecture. Several parts of that architecture are already being constructed. Stronger financing through the newly established Financial Intermediary Fund that His Excellency the Chancellor indicated. Thank you for your generosity and joining. Stronger global surveillance through the WHO Hub for Pandemic and Epidemic Intelligence, which opened here in Berlin last year. Stronger accountability through the Universal Health and Preparedness Review, which is now being piloted in 4 countries. And a stronger WHO, thanks to the historic commitment by member states at this year's World Health Assembly to make our financing substantially more predictable, flexible, and sustainable. A new agreement and a new architecture are essential, but we also need fundamental changes to the conditions that shape the health of the world's people. Which brings me to my third suggestion. Taking global health to the next level means a new global approach that prioritizes promoting health and preventing disease rather than only treating the sick. By and large, the world's health systems do not deliver health care. They deliver sick care. Many countries spend huge sums treating diseases that could be prevented for a fraction of the cost. That's why I'm calling on all countries to make a paradigm shift towards promoting health and preventing disease, recognizing that health starts not in hospitals and clinics, but in homes, streets, schools, workplaces. Making this shift requires a reorientation and rebalancing of health systems towards primary health care as the foundation of universal health coverage and health security. It also requires changes in how governments approach health and fund it. Health can no longer be just the business of the health ministry or the health sector, but of the whole of government and the whole of society. Health must be a primary consideration in urban planning, tax policy, transport, education policy, commerce, trade, finance, infrastructure, and so on. That means health can no longer be a junior portfolio in government, as it is in many countries, but must be elevated because healthy and secure populations are the foundation for healthy and secure societies and economies. Chancellor Scholz, Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, we live at a time when around the world global peace is under threat and must be protected and promoted with strong and principled leadership. Equally, we live at a time when global health is under threat and must be defended with equally strong and principled leadership. Over the next 48 hours, we have the opportunity to forge the path ahead together. Importantly, this week, we also have the opportunity to commit the resources to finish the job of consigning polio to the history books, as Chancellor said. We have come so far. And thank you, Chancellor, for announcing the funding from Germany. Vielen Dank. And we have come so far. We're so close. Now is the moment for all of us to work with determination, cooperation, and innovation to give future generations the gift of a polio-free world. So what does it mean to take global health to the next level? A new global agreement, a new global architecture, and a new global approach. Because health is not a cost, it's an investment. It's not simply an outcome of development, but the means. Health is a fundamental human right, it's not a luxury. As I often like to say, Gesundheit ist ein Menschenrecht. Vielen Dank. I think I need to repeat that. Gesundheit ist ein Menschenrecht. Vielen Dank. I thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tedros. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Tedros, both for reminding us and taking us back to the fundamentals, but also for reminding us that we have made progress, because sometimes work in global health can feel like a never-ending laundry list, and that just when we're so close, we fall back again. Strategic investment can work, does work. The challenge is to not lose sight of the goal when we are so close to the end. And that challenge is in many cases a political one, that when something is not seen as a crisis, it falls away from public priority. To illustrate and to share with us some thoughts about how we make sure we sustain strategic investments so that we don't see setbacks just when we're at the finish line, using a challenge that at another point in our history we might have considered insurmountable, I'd like to invite Dr. Mark Sussman of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to share more with us. Mark.
Thank you, Chancellor Scholz, Dr. Tedros, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to be here at this pivotal moment for global health. The deadline that UN member states set to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals is just 8 years away. And currently, with the recent setbacks of COVID and the food security crisis and other challenges, we are on a track to achieve almost none of them. A few years ago, we were telling a different story. In the first 2 decades of the 21st century, the world made incredible progress against infectious diseases, child mortality, and extreme poverty. but the COVID pandemic has set us back. So now is the time to increase support for the innovations and partnerships that will dramatically accelerate the pace of progress. Because these global goals are not just an academic exercise. Beneath the metrics are the stories of billions of people. And when the numbers move in the right direction, so does the quality of people's lives. That's why our foundation is dedicated to fighting infectious diseases that disproportionately affect people who already face the greatest challenges. Take polio, which we have already heard so much about. For parents in the vast majority of countries, it is a distant memory. But for parents in the remote areas of Afghanistan and Pakistan, the last two countries where wild polio remains endemic, the disease remains a constant threat to children's health. Of course, it is not just a threat to individual children and families. Polio also stands in the way of creating more equitable, resilient health systems. Over the last few decades, we have become incredibly close to eradicating polio. Even if you only look at what the eradication effort has accomplished with its targeted disease, it's amazing. Cases have been cut by 99.99%. Less than a year ago, wild polio cases were down to the single digits worldwide. That did not happen by accident. It happened because countries and multilateral partners came together with a shared sense of urgency and the resources to match. That global solidarity helped protect millions of children from paralysis. But that's not all it has done for the world. Polio eradication efforts have played a critical role in strengthening health systems. The same health workers who go door to door to administer polio vaccines also distribute nutritional supplements, mosquito nets to protect against malaria, and other life-saving vaccines. And the systems that countries like Pakistan and Nigeria have developed to monitor polio, day by day, case by case, have been used to track and respond to other threats like COVID-19. These are exactly the kinds of tools the world needs to confront compounding health threats and finish the job on polio. But we simply won't get there by maintaining the status quo. Not when catastrophic flooding in Pakistan has ground basic health services to a halt and displaced millions, allowing the virus to regain a foothold across the country when it had nearly been stamped out. Not when new wild polio cases have now appeared in Malawi and Mozambique. Not when strains of the virus, as we've heard already, have been found in New York, Jerusalem, and London. Until every country eradicates this disease, no country will be totally free from risk. We always knew the final steps towards polio eradication would be the toughest, but I'm not sure anyone could have envisioned the confluence of global crises that would make it this tough. The question, however, is not whether to act, it's how. If we do not all step up and meet the Global Polio Eradication Initiative's $4.8 billion goal, polio will spread again. And that is why today the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is proud to be pledging $1.2 billion to the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. Alongside partners like the government of Germany, Rotary International, the World Health Organization, the US Centers for Disease Control, Gavi, UNICEF, We will intensify the lessons learned from successful vaccination campaigns until we reach a world completely free from polio. Few people I've met and worked with are as committed to that vision and that future as Bill Gates, the co-chair of our foundation. Bill has been laser-focused on ending polio for as long as I have known him, and it is my honor today to introduce him.
Hello, everyone. As Mark shared, our foundation is pledging $1.2 billion in support of the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. In recent months, the media has been paying more attention to polio because of its reappearance in places like the United States and the United Kingdom. But a committed group of people have been paying attention for decades. It's horrifying to see children paralyzed by a disease that's totally preventable. Polio is a stark illustration of health inequity. There is something incredibly unjust about kids facing a disease that has been nearly wiped out in every part of the world except in their country. The campaign to end polio also means so much to me because it shows what we can achieve when we work together. The number of annual polio cases has fallen from 350,000 a year in 1988 to less than 1,000 a year today. Eradication is very close. Finally, there's the fact that the tools designed to combat polio have proved vital to fighting other diseases, including COVID-19. Investing in the fight against polio means stronger health systems for everyone. So we've come a long ways, but polio is still a threat. Together, we can end that threat forever if we choose to. I'm grateful to the people of Germany for their strong support of polio eradication efforts. Now it's up to all of us to get the job done. Thank you.
Thank you. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that common thread that has been pulled from the speech of the Chancellor to the remarks of Mr. Gates, Vernetzung matters, Zusammenarbeit matters, and a new German phrase for you, konsequent bleiben matters. Ask any German parent, they'll translate that one for you. To celebrate this good news and to celebrate human ingenuity and accomplishment in a different way, let's turn now to a small musical interlude using our second universal language. Performing for us will be Fanny Rennert, a chamber music and concert soprano, accompanied on the piano by Ekaterina Baeva, both, one from Vienna, one from Kaliningrad, have profited from a long-standing tradition in Germany of training musicians here in Berlin and in Hanover, which is down the road, so to speak. They will perform one longer and two shorter pieces for us in the following order. O mio Babino Caro, Lauretta's aria. Did I get that right? I got that right. Okay. From the opera Gianni Schicchi by Giacomo Puccini. Then Nana by Manuel de Falla from Siete Canciones Populares Españoles. And then La Tarara by Federico Garcia Lorca. Fanny, Ekaterina.
tarara sì, la tarara no, la tarara niña che l'hai visto io. Levami tarare un vestido verde lino levo lonces e di cascabeis. La tarara sì, la tarara no, la tarara niña che l'hai visto io. No se me tarara sostoyos y cera sobre las retomas y la hierba buenas. La tarara sí, la tarara no, la tarara niña que l'hai visto yo. Ay tarara no cambiará, cintura para los muchachos de las aceitunas. La tarara sí, la tarara no, la tarara niña que l'hai visto yo.
That was both brilliant and invigorating. Yeah. Thank you both for that. We're privileged to have with us today, on behalf of President Macron of the Republic of France, who is also patron of the World Health Summit, Dr. François Braun, Minister for Solidarity and Health. France has made clear its commitment to strengthen multilateral governance for health and to engage partners in the efforts to frame and adopt an international treaty on pandemics. France has also indicated it is reflecting on other aspects of its future strategy for global health. And I'd like to invite Dr. Braun to share these with us. Dr. Braun, vous avez la parole.
Dear Chancellor, dear Director General, sorry. It's very difficult to speak after just a performance. Distinguished heads of state and government, dear ministers, ladies and gentlemen. Since 2009, the World Health Summit has become a reference in global health. It is a great honor to be here tonight. I am speaking on behalf of the President of the French Republic, Emmanuel Macron, who is delighted to be a high patron of this event. First, I would like to thank the World Health Organization, which is co-hosting the summit for the first time. Mr. Director General, dear Tedros, your crucial role in the COVID-19 response and your relentless activism is well known. France strongly supports the World Health Organization and will continue to promote its central role. Dear Chancellor, please allow me on behalf of the French President to thank you very warmly for your commitment to global health and for hosting this event during the German G7 presidency. In order to foster the rebuilding and resilience of public health around the world, a global and collective approach is essential. In light of the lessons learned, we must now complete our efforts to achieve a coherent, effective and sustainable system. In this respect, France fully supports the ongoing processes to revise the international health regulations and to conclude a new international agreement on pandemics. They will help us to better anticipate the spread of a pathogen, to better contain it, and ultimately to reduce the impact on our populations and our health systems. France strongly advocated the multilateral health architecture. That is why my country is proud to host the World Health Organization Academy, the World Health Organization Lyon Office for Health Security, and the International Agency for Research on Cancer, as useful assets for global health. In order to better anticipate and respond to future pandemics, strengthening health systems is key. This requires significant funding. And I would like to greet the historic agreement reached by the Member States who increase WHO's resources. In doing so, I believe that we are taking the key action of World Health Organization to a whole new level. This leads me to thank the G20 Indonesian presidency, along with Italy, for their leading role in the G20 Health and Finance Task Force. This task force helps us to define the both sustainable and necessary financing in order to prepare and respond to health threats. As a result, the creation of the new Financial Intermediation Fund, hosted by the World Bank, sends a strong signal of our collective will. France is, of course, joining the fifth. Now, it is up to all of us to address in a coherent way the expectations and needs of countries. However, we must not forget that multilateral action is only effective if closely combined with a regional approach. This means strengthening local and regional capacities for manufacturing, research and surveillance so that all regions of the world can achieve health sovereignty. At the pan-European level, the challenge is twofold: strengthening the European Health Union and acting as Team Europe in the world. On the one hand, for the past 2 years, EU member states worked hard to create the Health Union. This led the adoption of the EU for Health programme, but also the strengthening of an European CDC and the European Medicines Agency, as well as the creation of the European Health Emergency Response and Preparedness Authority, the HERA. We are also reflecting more broadly on global health. The European Union will indeed soon launch an ambitious European global health strategy. This work aims to put more Europe into global health, just as we have to put more global health into Europe, to use the words of the director of the WHO Regional Office for Europe, dear Hans Kluge. On the other hand, as part of Team Europe, we also support regional approaches in other continents. This is what we do today in Africa, with the collaboration between the African CDC and the European CDC, as well as the Team Europe initiative dedicated to manufacturing of health products. In addition, we support global cooperation projects, such as the mRNA Technology Transfer Hub in South Africa and its 15 spokes around the world, with the support of the WHO and the Medicines Patent Pool. I think that an equitable access to medical countermeasures is key to our response to pandemics. That is why France fully supports these initiatives. However, developing manufacturing sites around the world is not enough. We must ensure their sustainability. We must also ensure that in crisis, private companies deliver their products regardless of the country's GDP. This is crucial in terms of equity. Ladies and gentlemen, all of these initiatives were put in place in light of the failures in the COVID-19's response. Nevertheless, it should not overshadow other important health issues, from epidemic disease to mental health and to inequities in access to health. And all the more since the pandemic has had strong crowding out effects, often resulting in unprecedented setbacks. France, as the second largest contributor to the Global Fund, will support efforts to eradicate AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria by a new increase of our financial contribution, as announced by our President a few weeks ago in New York. This strong French pledge is also what drives us to support UNITAID. Throughout the COVID-19 crisis, UNITAID has demonstrated its added value in providing access to innovative, safe, affordable and effective products. In short, ladies and gentlemen, France is pursuing its commitment to a new global health order for the benefit of the most vulnerable populations. As an emergency physician, I was able to see firsthand the difficulties experienced by the caregivers and health workers, among whom a majority of women in the front line. For all these reasons, we must seize this moment to close the gap in funding, standards and leadership, which are all needed to achieve universal health coverage and the Sustainable Development Goal 3. Let's bet on capacity of human beings to find together solutions to adapt to shocks, infections or not, and to live in good health in harmony with their environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Brown. You can be assured that for this community, your speech was just as invigorating as the music. The points on equity, 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 investment, for equity, for access, for taking a transversal and an end-to-end approach are well understood and will hopefully be taken up by the global community, the global family. This issue of transversality is a theme of the upcoming G20 summit in Bali, which will weave into all of its work streams discussions for the design of a global health architecture that is fit for purpose. We would very much have liked to hear from Indonesia's G20 president. Unfortunately, Director General of the Ministry of Health, Dr. Maria Endang Sumi, cannot be with us tonight. She will, however, be here from tomorrow, and we hope to learn more about the plans from then on. And of course, to participate and follow closely the G20 summit in November. At the beginning of this year, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres expressed his wish that 2022 be a year of recovery from the pandemic, and also one in which we turned moments of great challenges and great difficulty into moments of great opportunity. The Secretary General expresses confidence that we could pass what he reminds us are more than just policy tests, but tests also of moral and real-life fortitude. Though he is unable to join us in person, he has this to add by video.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to greet this year's World Health Summit. We live in a time of great risk and uncertainty. Nations and communities are still working to recover from the profound impacts of COVID-19. The pandemic demonstrated how poorly we are prepared for crisis. Women have been among the hardest hit. They are shouldering an increased burden of care in families and as frontline workers. At the same time, many women have endured significant income reduction due to job losses and the absence of adequate social safety nets. The COVID-19 pandemic, along with the current food, energy and financial crisis, has set back efforts to reduce poverty and hunger and implement the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. To advance the Sustainable Development Goals, we must recalibrate multilateralism and strengthen global cooperation. Too little is being invested globally in the systems needed for people's health and well-being. Global health security and preparedness need to be strengthened through sustained political commitment and leadership. This requires governments to give priority to health, and wealthier countries and international financial institutions need to support developing countries to make those crucial investments. Our unbalanced global financial system is failing the developing world. This must change. All people need inclusive, impartial and equitable access to health services to deliver universal health coverage. And in these times of great trouble and stress, we must ensure that mental health is not a neglected aspect of health care. Physical and mental health are the foundation for peaceful, sustainable societies. I wish you a productive World Health Summit that will provide health for all, and I thank you.
Distinguished guests, we now move from policy to implementation to a conversation among service provision leaders for those who are often the most vulnerable and the least visible, our children. At this juncture, I'd like to hand over to Dr. Ilona Kickbusch to chair this discussion. Ilona.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's very difficult to do an opening without speeches, but, and you've had those. We thought we would add a conversation as well. And as you just heard from our moderator, it's a conversation with people who are out there, who experience some of the toughest issues that we face, particularly in relation to children. And I would like them to join me here on stage, two fantastic women leaders, Inger Ashing, the CEO of Save the Children International, and Helga Mutsingava, who is the youth representative, founder and CEO of Afya Pamoja from Tanzania. Please come and join me. Thank you very much. We're providing a bit of a counterbalance, as you can see. And we would like to say, what does health, taking global health to a new level, mean in terms of the health of the next generation? We're very happy that there are many youth leaders also here in the audience, and that some of the sessions also take up the issue of children. And of course, the polio pledge that we have already spoken about is significantly about children and their future. But I'd like to turn to Ms. Ashing, to Inger, and ask her, infectious diseases obviously are enormous challenges to children. Many of them die. But your experience is that it goes so far beyond that, and that you work really in the hardest to reach places for children, with children. There it is really toughest to be a child, as you say. So what role does health play in your work? How do we bring these issues together if we really want to have a future for children?
Thank you so much for that question. And I want to start by saying that, in my opinion, and the opinion of many others, we are actually witnessing one of the worst child rights crises that we've seen. Progress of decades of progress in many areas, including health, has been halted or actually worsened due to a number of situations that children have faced, COVID-19 being one of them. But we have more conflicts in the world than ever before. We have climate change and also a more and more discussed the cost of living crisis. So I think on all levels, children of today is witnessing and experiencing a much more difficult situation. And as a global child rights organization and the largest independent child rights organization, of course, ensuring that all children have the opportunity to thrive, to grow up healthy, to have access to education, to be safe, is a very big part of our mandate. And we do that in working in close collaboration and partnership with children themselves and with local organizations in many of the countries where we work. We did a survey a while back where we asked children themselves and also their caregivers on how COVID had impacted their lives. And 89% of them said that due to COVID, they had limited access to healthcare, which of course had a lot of negative implications. Routine immunization didn't happen, treatment of severely malnourished children isn't happening. So we see a lot of challenges right now. And as we also heard the Secretary General speaking about, the mental health is an increasingly it's an increasing crisis among children. I want to say something about the climate-related shocks, because we do see them happening around us. Earlier tonight we heard about the situation in Pakistan. We have droughts, we have cyclones, we have heat waves, and they all pose dangerous threats to children's health. Lack of water, sanitation, hygiene services make them more vulnerable to treatable diseases, diseases that we normally can handle, and that with the current situation where we're leaving children on their own without proper access to treatment. And the final thing I want to say to this question is that the global hunger and malnutrition crisis is seriously affecting children. Child mortality is rising dramatically, and we also see that in combination with diseases that we can't treat, not being treated, is a real risk. We saw it in Somalia in 2011. We're seeing it in the Horn of Africa right now. I spoke to my team who is working in Somalia a while back, and we are currently trying to, with a lot of other partners, try to save the lives of the more than 500,000 children that are at the acute risk of dying right now. And one woman, she came to one of our health facilities with one of her children. She had 3 sick children. She could only carry one, and that is not a choice any parent should have to make, but that is what life looks like today, and that is the challenge that children and their families are facing.
Thank you, Inga, and thank you. Thank you for drawing attention to what's sometimes called the forgotten crises. And we know also that Dr. Tedros from WHO very significantly always draws attention to those crises that have been with us, it seems, forever, that we have not been able to resolve, and that therefore move out of the news cycle and mean very dire situations for the people involved. Helga, your organization obviously works to advocate for health, for the health of the future, and we've seen the many young people that are here, and we see the concern of young people that in some cases are turning to quite radical means to be listened to. So Helga, are you listened to? Everybody says, you know, you can't do a panel without a youth representative anymore. You have to have youth representatives at your meetings. So I think that's a fantastic development, but I'm an old women's advocate, you know, and there were times when we were there, but we weren't listened to. So what feeling do you have? What do you think has to be done?
That's interesting for a young person to be asked that question, and I'll respond as it is. There is an initiative of listening, but I'm sad to say that we are not being listened enough. And that is the sense that if not every young person of any background in any institution or government system is being listened to, or the action is being taken from what they have voiced up, then it's not enough. But I think for the initiative, we need to continue. And as I've been introduced, my organization that I'm working with, Afya Pamoja, which is Health Together in Swahili, we're working with the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of the President's Office, Regional Administration and Local Government Authorities to make sure that the voices of the citizens in healthcare system are being listened to. And this is through the mobile phones feedback after receiving the services. And why mobile phones, why the existing digital platform in the government system itself, so that the healthcare provider from the primary healthcare level to the tertiary level, they're able to see on timely basis the response so that they can improve the quality of healthcare services. I'm here also as the youth board representative of the Global Youth Mobilization, whereby the big 6 youth organizations in the world, in support of WHO and the UN Foundation, were able to have funds that were taken, the funds were able to be put into the hands of young people in over 70 countries, and over 140 projects were led by the young people during the COVID-19 pandemic, which is still happening. And we hope these young people still continue to support their communities even after this pandemic. And the areas that young people that have been able to work on is on the gender inequality, mental health, vaccine inequity, education disruption, and employment. So all health, all effects that were that happened due to COVID-19, young people were affected. And through their own communities, with the support of WHO and UN Foundation, these young people have continued to do amazing things with the funds that we were able to receive. Thank you.
So thank you for highlighting this notion of leadership of young people, and particularly if they are empowered also. Actually, in a project that I'm running, the young people said I was not allowed to use the word empowerment anymore, but I must speak of enfranchisement, and meaning really that you do have power, that you take it, and that you take your rights forward. So Inge, you know, very frequently when we think about humanitarian situations, we think of the people in those situations as victims. At the same time, they have to develop enormous strength to actually live through those situations. And you said, you know, this example of the mother that you gave, those enormously difficult choices that they need to make. So in that context, if we talk about who needs to act, you know, what is possible in that context? It's not just about bringing money, it's not just about bringing food. What is it that your organization really wants to achieve in terms perhaps also of this enfranchisement?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for that great example. I'm so proud of, there's so many great youth movements around the world and we need to support them. But I think the start of your question is maybe, in my view, the most important one, and that is that we are not talking about victims. We are talking about people with a lot of agency, a lot of strength. And I was in Afghanistan 2 months ago, and I met a number of young girls who are being robbed of their education, robbed of their future. But the resilience in this group of girls, the commitment to be part of a positive change, that is what keeps me going. That is what makes me think it is possible, because there's so incredibly strong and resilient people around the world that needs the right help and the right support to be able to turn their own situation around, to turn their own countries around, their own communities around. So focusing on local partners, local children themselves is really, really critical. But we cannot leave them on their own, because things will not change unless we step forward and support them. And we've heard a lot of speakers before us earlier tonight talk about the need for a more equitable global health order, a new global approach to health. We heard Ms. Galina and Dr. Tedros saying that, and I think that is so important, because if we don't have the political leadership, the political will, but also the financial commitments, because to be honest, if we talk about the humanitarian situation in the world, we see the number of pledges going up and the financial contribution to the pledges percentage-wise going down. But two areas that I want to address specifically, and one is that we need to invest in early warning and anticipatory action, and we need to do that now, because we need to prevent the crises before they happen. And we heard it from Chancellor Scholz saying as well, preparedness matter. And we heard from Dr. Tedros as well that it is about promotion, it's about prevention. And we know that that works, so that's where we need to focus. But we also need to address the root causes of many of the situations and the crises we are part of. So in my view and in my organization's view, it's all about investing in building resilience systems, but also working to support the health and educational systems, because I do think it's important to have a holistic approach. We had a lot of other people saying that. So that's what I would say. It is important to ensure that we help governments invest in children's health. And I think that there's a very important conversation to be held about debt and debt relief, also about securing climate financing that works for children. and also to ensure that we have the ODA, the aid that is needed. But working together is critical. I want to just end this with a message from a couple of children that we spoke to about what needs to be done differently.
Can we do that in the next round?
Yes, okay.
Yeah. I'd like to turn to Helga because you spoke about Afghanistan, you spoke about women and girls. And of course, this is one thing that we're experiencing. You know, we've experienced on the one hand the contraction of civil society space, and we have experienced a lack of support to sexual and reproductive health and rights. We're experiencing a rollback on women's rights and girls' rights. We have the situation in Iran that has erupted. So in terms of your activities, Helga, how much are you involved, touched by this? How do you take this forward when these dire situations happen in some of the countries where young people, young women in particular, are fighting for their rights?
That's a good question. I just got reminded yesterday, actually, first of all, that girls and young women, or women in general, they are vulnerable. But then we need to remember that girls and women who have disability are worse than that. So we need to really think about, as we were thinking about this vulnerable group, those with disabilities, it gets to be very, very worse than that. And the girls and women are experts of their own lives. And I would really like to insist on this, that decisions are not supposed to be made for themselves. No matter how old this girl is, they are experts. And you can see I'm wearing a scarf, I'm a Girl Guide. And representing the big 6 youth organizations, we are champions of non-formal education. This gets to be the platform whereby young people as Girl Guides, the programs or the activities that gets to be created to solve the problem are developed by consulting the girls and women themselves. So that means they get to be considered. And they get to be led into supporting the communities, into speaking about the problems, but also on how to lead in solving these problems. I have an example of a program we have on the girl-powered nutrition, but as an expert, it might be spoken in very much technical words. But we have a program whereby girls from the age of 3 to above, they understand things about iron deficiency, anemia, and then they get to learn on how they get to solve these problems, on how they get to engage their community leaders, on how they get to engage their families to speak about this. What is the best meals to have? How do we have a garden? So this is the basic thing that gets to be developed by the conversation, by the safe space of education and knowledge sharing. You don't need to be an expert to champion for something that is very important in your community or it's very important about your life. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have to bring this short conversation to a close, but I'd like to give each of you an opportunity. You have this enormous audience here of committed people in global health. What is the one message you want to leave with them in relation to the health and the rights of children? Did you start, Inga? One message.
Yes, so then I will quote the children we spoke to. And I think, as Helga said, we cannot do anything without them. So I think that is my main message to you. But their message to you is look beyond national interest, work in partnerships, draw inspiration from innovation, take responsibility, and act with urgency.
Act with urgency. What would you add, Helga?
I would request for a meaningful engagement of young people in the healthcare system. We are experts, we live the experience, and through the global youth mobilization, we have seen the impact that has been brought by young people. So invest in young people with meaningful engagement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I hope as you discuss in the course of the next 2 days, you keep these messages in mind. And I think for many of the global health issues that we deal with, we have this feeling, act with urgency and to take it forward. Now, many of you will have been here yesterday when there was an historic moment, the first time the Virchow Prize was given to a distinguished person. It is now my great pleasure to ask to the stage the initiator of the prize, Professor Detlef Ganten, and the first laureate of the prize as well, Dr. John Nkengasong. Please come up to the stage. There you go.
Ambassador, Excellency, dear John, you're the recipient of the first Virchow Prize for Global Health. Now, Virchow was born exactly 3 days ago, October 13, but 201 years ago also, here in Berlin at the Charité. What does this prize mean for you? Virchow was an historic person. You are a living person with high responsibilities. What does it mean to you to have received this prize?
Thank you so much. As I stated yesterday when receiving the prize, I said it brought tremendous humility, but honor to me, because if I read the history and the background of Rudolf Virchow, it speaks to how we have to bring multidimensionalism to solving global health problems. He was a physician, a biologist, anthropologist, a writer, and a politician. So that says to me that as we discuss how to elevate global health, take it to the next level, we should be thinking of investing in the next generation, the next leaders of global health, in a manner that will bring multidimensionalism to the way we train them and prepare them to take on leadership for the future. That is, I believe, a cornerstone for us to continue to preserve and ensure that there's continuity in the young science domain, which is global health. Global health is not a very ancient topic like clinical medicine. So in order to promote that, I believe we have to invest in the future.
Thank you. Many leaders have been speaking here, and one of the leaders from this country, of course, was Chancellor Olaf Scholz. And I was surprised, as you may have been, that he was citing a scientist, Svante Pääbo, who won the Nobel Prize just a few days ago, actually. And Svante Pääbo showed that we, modern men, all of us here in the room, came from Africa. Homo sapiens came from Africa, close to the Lake Victoria in the area of Uganda. So what can we learn from Africa?
I think, first of all, we should be very proud from the Chancellor's remarks that we have a common ancestral root from Africa. I think that is something to be proud of. But very importantly is several things from Africa. One is the resilience of the continent. We saw during this pandemic, the current pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, how resilient the continent was able to organize itself and fight this pandemic in a remarkable way. It was unique, a continent, and they fought it in a way that brought in the whole concept of collaboration, coordination, communication, and coordination. I think it's very important that we learn those lessons throughout this summit. Yesterday and today, we've heard lessons that good global health practice is good cooperation and is good collaboration. Africa have shown that under the very able leadership at that time of the chairperson of the African Union, President Cyril Ramaphosa. That again speaks to the interface between political leadership, good political leadership, and good public health practice. I think those are all lessons that we could learn from the continent of Africa.
Thank you. John, the final question. There was a moment of excitement. There were many moments of excitement, of course, during the session, but one moment of excitement was the alarm, an apparent emergency. And it is my information that the demonstrators and protesters outside in the street, and they're not happy with the World Health Summit. Some of them may say that the World Health Summit includes, of course, politics, and some of the politics are kind of controversial. There is the private sector, and some people think that parts of what is being done by the private sector is not accepted by some of the people. Mm-hmm. And there's academia, and of course academia is diverse, and civil society is even more diverse. So what would you say to the protesters, that we accept all those people, even controversial people, here in this room to discuss with us global health?
I think first we should listen to the protesters. What is it that they are protesting, and why are they concerned? Because global health is all of us. It brings multiple dimensions to it: sociology, the civil society, the community, lawyers, policymakers. So it's important that, as I said earlier, that as we charge forward to advance global health, good global health practice, we should have all the voices in the room to understand what is going on. I think if we have them in the room, it will be an opportunity to educate them that you cannot advance innovation in global health without the private sector. The private sector is an integral part of global health, and they should be at the table, and their voices should be heard all the time.
Thank you very much, John, for these three very important answers. And the World Health Summit is just beginning, and John will be with us for the next 2 days, and we'll have continued possibilities to discuss with you. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
And of course, congratulations again to the Nobel Prize. Actually, not Nobel Prize, the Virchow Prize.
So thank you very much to the two of you. We will now come to the end of the summit. I would note the end of this opening. I'm so sorry. To the end of this opening, I would like to call on Axel Pries, on Hajo Krömer, and on Katharina Böhme to please come up for the opening. Yes, for the welcome to everybody. Please join.
Okay.
So, good evening, everybody. And there's only a couple of minutes now, which we would like to use to welcome you here at this meeting. It's a particular pleasure for me as CEO of Charité. And technically speaking, WHS is a part of Charité, and I guess during the last 3 years, 2.5 years, we have been closely aligned in fighting COVID under the WHS leadership of Axel Pries. At the same time, we had a very close cooperation with WHO, an unusual close collaboration with WHO last year in establishing the hub of WHO here in Berlin, for which we have again a close interaction from Charité with WHO. And in the setting of that, we made the boss of WHO an honorary member of Charité, so it's I think a complete alignment. And with that, I would like to hand on to you for a further remark.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I wish that Dr. Tedros was here to receive your greetings and thanks in person, Hajo. The Charité is a fantastic partner to WHO, so thank you for that. But I know that you know, all of you must be hungry, and we have to bring this to an end. So let me just say thank you again to all of you, and have a successful World Health Summit 22. Thank you.
Do you hear me? It's only me between you and the buffet outside, so I will be very brief. But maybe Detlef Ganten alluded to the protesters. Maybe they wanted to, by pressing the fire button, they wanted to tell us it's pretty late. I think we have to take that message very, very seriously. So the fire button is on. And this planet is just too small for national and sectorial egoism. We have to work together, and the time is very short. And that's what the WHO and the WHS are about. So please roll up your sleeves, start to act, and enjoy these days here in Berlin. I think we can address very serious problems and still have fun together, and friendship and trust. And with this, I declare the WHS 2022, sorry, was a long day, 2022 open.